Tom. So today we're going to talk about the winter release. Let's start a little bit with Propel's release cadence and just how our product roadmap goes from kind of ideation to an actual release cadence over the course of a year. So the winter release was our last release from last year. So just walk us through maybe the 2025 release calendar and how it came together.
Sure. Yeah. When we put together our release calendar, we typically think about inputs from a variety of different sources, right? Obviously, we think about what customers want and need and what they're asking us for. We think about the marketplace, like what are key drivers, what are trends going on, and things like that. And then we just look at kind of overall positioning and where we are in relation to alternative solutions out there, what competitors are doing, what a company like PTC might be doing, or Siemens or Autodesk or others. So we take those several different inputs as to inform our release. And then we also have, of course, the benefit of the Salesforce release cadence and innovation, which we inherit all of the goodness from Salesforce. So we also look to the timing of their major releases. And you put all that together, and that delivers for us 3 major releases per year. And beyond that, some additional minor releases interspersed in among them. So why 3? Well, we think that in today's world, with the modern solutions that customers are asking for and yearning for, and the modern solution that Propel is, it affords us that ability to turn around things and innovate things rather quickly. So we think it's in our best interest and in the customer's best interest primarily, if we've got great new ideas that the customer is giving us, that the market is demanding, that we turn those around quickly. So you put all that together, and that gives us a cadence of 3 major releases per year and minor releases interspersed among them.
So I want to pick on something that you mentioned, though, the Salesforce release, because that's important to keep in mind. Our release is really focused on that domain expertise that we have with product data and workflows across product quality, engineering, sales, service, all of that. But as you mentioned, we also, because we are built on the Salesforce platform, we inherit all of that from their release cadence as well. And I think it's something like they put $4 or $5 billion a year into R&D that directly goes into their system architecture, their AI, which we'll get into in a second, security, scalability, all of that. It's constantly being worked on and invested.
Yeah.
And when Salesforce releases that, we inherit that as well. So we've got 3 major releases focused on that domain portion, but underneath the surface, that whole platform, there's a whole set of 3 additional major releases that comes from Salesforce that we inherit as well.
You're right. And to the tune of about $5 billion of R&D investment per year. So that's in the space absolutely enormous to be able to have that advantage to give us those technical underpinnings and to form the foundational layer upon which we can add all that business layer, that business intelligence, the application logic on top of it.
Yeah,
absolutely right.
And then that goes into why we have so many configuration layers, why we're able to configure so much instead of having to put custom code in place. Basically, our low-code, no-code platform is inherited from Salesforce because of all the R&D that they put in. And as we mentioned, Propel One, which is just the integral AI into what we're doing. So another thing that I want to make sure that we cover before we're going in. So when you talk about our release schedule and all of the things that we look at, one of the things that I'm always amazed at is we will get a request over the summer, and then it'll be in the winter released, or we'll get a need. And it can be from any of those. It can be a market shift. It can be all of a sudden we realize that there's a need for our customers that we didn't have on our roadmap earlier in the year, but there's a shift that occurs, and we were able to get that in the winter release. How were we able to move that quickly?
Yeah, well, good question. We are able to move that quickly for all the reasons that we were just kind of talking about here. We've got the most robust B2B collaboration platform on which we can build our application. And we can do so in a way that gives us a breadth and depth that's unmatched by others in the industry. And that allows us to be far more responsive, right? If you think about some of the other alternative solutions out there. Now, most all of the competitors that we see in the space are all going to and have some form of a cloud solution. But for a lot of them, most of the majority of their business is still based on their on-prem technologies. So if you think about the cadence of a Windchill, the on-prem version, or a Team Center, they can be well over a year, in some cases, a couple of years in between major releases. Whereas with us, we're able to turn these things around in 3 or 4 months, owing to the fact that we've got that underpinning. We've got a very robust platform, and we continue to look at and push the envelope on development tools that we can use, inclusive of AI development tools that allow us to get an incredible productivity advantage. And all of it adds up to a pace of innovation in the PLM, QMS, PIM space that's really unmatched.
Yeah, and that's not what the PLM space is generally known for. So
Right.
we do like to highlight that as a key differentiator. If you come to Propel, you have a lot more capabilities today than you had if you had bought Propel a year ago, or God forbid, 5 years ago. That's not necessarily the case with the other PLM providers because, as you mentioned, their development cycles are so long for their own code base updates.
Right.
Okay, so great. So with that context, let's move on. Winter release was announced in December. And can you just walk us through at a high level what was in that release?
Yeah. Well, number one is our biggest release ever. And two major capabilities that are worth a good chunk of time to talk about each one. Propel One, which is our agentic AI capabilities, and Design Hub, which is our set of capabilities for dealing with and managing design data that comes into a new product development process or a sustaining engineering process. And you have to figure out how to ingest information that's coming from a variety of mechanical CAD and electrical CAD systems, and eventually software, and be able to bring that into the enterprise environment so all the other parties can see it, act on it, respond to it, and oh, by the way, respond as changes happen. So those are the two big areas, the agentic AI capabilities, we call that Propel One, and this ability to gracefully handle multi-domain, multi-CAD data, and we call that Propel Design Hub.
So Propel One, this was our third release this year. Let's put that one aside because again, we've talked about Propel One a lot this year, and I think at this point most people know about it. Design Hub being new is where I think we should really focus.
Yeah. Okay.
So tell me a little bit about why. So why did we go about building Design Hub? What was the market need here that we saw?
Yeah. So the market need is for companies that have some form of captive design in their products, meaning it's not just everything is not just sourced and spec'd, but you're authoring geometric data in the form of mechanical components and mechanical subassemblies and mechanical products. You're authoring information in the form of electrical data, printed circuit boards and schematics primarily. You are developing products that most likely incorporate both of those design data that's coming from that represents the mechanical world and that represents the electrical world, and you are incorporating that into your product. And having to gain control over that information is one of the lingering problems of PLM. I've often talked about PLM of being kind of 2 decades, maybe now going on 3 decades of dysfunction, where this great enterprise application has often been squirreled away in the engineering corner, doing a good job about squeezing pennies out of design, but not necessarily taking that product information in a way that democratizes it and allows the rest of the enterprise to participate in it. So engineering, absolutely essential, but it is far from the long pole in the tent when you look at all of the other players that are responsible for a product being successful. So beyond engineering, you need your purchasing folks, supply chain folks, production folks, quality folks, sales, marketing, service, among others, to just to understand what's going on with the product so that they can what? Sell it, service it, ensure it's of high quality, produce it, source the components that go into it, all of those other things. And the way that this has been done to date in PLM, it's been very problematic. Either there has not been an integration from the engineering work group to the enterprise, or there has been one, typically offered by the vendor that also developed the CAD system. And what's the problem there? It tends to be very bespoke, highly tuned, brittle, and tends to be kind of expensive. And it's difficult to keep that integration current and up to date. So the problem that we're solving is a discontinuity in a workflow between the work group, the engineering folks that are authoring content, the design content, and the enterprise. Everyone else that needs to see and act upon that information.
So let me dig in because you said a couple of things that always seems to strike a nerve. The thing that I keep hearing from a lot of our customers is they see PLM that is deployed more like a PDM. It's just intended to be a file vault for my CAD design files, and I'm not getting then the information to the rest of my organization, which is what you just discovered. So what exactly does Design Hub do versus just the Propel core, right? Because when I think about Propel, part of our messaging, for many years now is how do you get that product data to the right person anywhere in the org? So that's just Propel. That's not necessarily Design Hub. I'm trying to understand what specifically Design Hub does in this to help make that a reality.
Yeah. So what Propel does with the winter release and the advent of Design Hub is it meets the customer where they are. And by that, I mean, this work group to enterprise disconnect shows itself in a variety of ways. It might show itself in the case where there's a handful of people that have a mechanical CAD license, let's say for a product like SolidWorks, which is the CAD product that we probably see most often, or Autodesk. AutoCAD, the vendor is Autodesk.
Yep.
So the brand AutoCAD, the brand SolidWorks, those are probably the two most prominent brands that we see. And in some cases, for small teams or small divisions, they might only have a CAD system. They're not version controlling those files. They're not managing it in any particular way. other than using creative naming conventions so that they don't overwrite each other's work. So one is the ability to handle that situation. And we do that through advanced importing capabilities and mapping profiles so that we can understand whether this data is coming from SolidWorks or AutoCAD or Creo or one of the other products. And we understand how they will typically structure their export of information so that we can gracefully and robustly handle that as an import. And for some small groups and small work groups, they may not have an appetite for anything more than that. And we can handle that. Then there are other companies or other environments where it's a larger team. And it's a larger team creating enough CAD files that they risk stepping on each other if they're not putting some management in place. And in those environments, you'll typically see the CAD system, let's use SolidWorks again, paired with the corresponding PDM system, most often associated to manage it, SolidWorks PDM in either the enterprise or the standard or the professional edition, whatever it's called. And in that case, you typically you need this thing to continue to do its job. If you like the job that it's doing, we'll talk about if you don't in a second. So you might want to connect to PDM systems. And furthermore, you might want to connect to several PDM systems. So there may be SolidWorks and SolidWorks PDM, AutoCAD and Autodesk Vault. And you might need to bring both of those things connected together to one singular PLM environment. We do that as well. As part of Design Hub, we've got a set of partnerships that allow us to build that connectivity in regardless of what the situation is. And then that other environment I mentioned, in some cases, you might have or want to have a more modern PDM system. So you may have SolidWorks and you may have SolidWorks PDM, which is a good, capable system, but it's a little long in the tooth and it is on premise. So it's the old kind of client server architecture. Maybe you want to upgrade that. Maybe you want that to be a cloud-based capability. Propel now has that capability as well. So this is what I mean by meeting the customer where they are.
Yeah.
Small work group, only using the CAD authoring platform, we got you covered. Have a PDM and like it, we got you covered. Have a PDM and don't like it, or want a PDM, or want to upgrade your PDM, we got you covered. Oh, and then what about ECAD? Same thing as well. And in most cases, the very robust import mapping profile system that we have will work perfectly well for a variety of ECAD files. So all this means you can have a very complex, we can support customers that have a variety of different environments where their as-is state is MCAD 1, MCAD 2, PDM 1, PDM 2, ECAD 1, ECAD 2, and all of that being able to be unified inside the PLM world where you can ingest that information, you can preview it before you commit to a change, put it through a draft change order, and move ahead. And then what always happens is there is a change. So your engineering team goes back and makes a change. They add some more components to the CAD assembly. They take out some components. They change some metadata or some attributes. They change a material. All of that information flows through to Propel, and you continue on and usher that change through the rest of the enterprise. So that is what we're doing. And a lot of this ends up being to address productivity challenges, right? Tech Clarity has done a lot of research on this, and they've talked about engineers typically lose 19% of their time looking for information. Like they don't know where they place a file. They don't know what the correct version of a file is. That's a day a week of engineering time. just lost trying to resolve these fundamental issues that shouldn't be a problem at all. So think about that, and then think about the opportunity costs that creates. So those are all things that we can resolve very efficiently, very elegantly with Design Hub.
So I want to just dig in a little bit deeper on a couple of things that you said. So the thing that I normally hear from customers, there's normally two, maybe three things that have occurred. One, acquisitions, and when we've acquired companies, or excuse me, when they have acquired companies, you've got different CADs in place. The teams are working. We don't want any type of downtime or lost productivity as we're integrating. We're really looking for a solution that can help us continue with multiple CADs. We don't want to change what is working for those teams. The
Yeah,
second thing that we hear a lot is we went through a lot of growth. And as we've gone through growth, what made sense as a small team doesn't necessarily make sense as a big team. And again, we're trying to evolve and we're trying to get better and more efficient at what we're doing, but we don't want to really impact short-term productivity as we're doing that. And then the third thing, and this is one that nobody ever wants to admit on camera, but we can talk about, we just set it up wrong. We made a decision that
yeah,
probably shouldn't have been made at that time, and now we're trying to fix it. But again, as we're fixing it, we don't want to lose productivity. So when we think about the whole design process going into then build and sell and service, when I think about Design Hub and how our customers are interacting with Design Hub, they're just trying to shift left in that whole process and go as far less as they have to, given whatever the history has been with their own CAD and PDM solutions. You mentioned there's this flexibility to connect wherever we need to connect, to include a PDM if we need it, to connect to a PDM if it's already in place. Like just going back to that configurability of our platform, we can configure this whatever makes the most sense. But then the goal is that all of that spider web, if you will, of design files comes into a single design hub. And once it is in there, now you've got the ability to get verified, accurate information that can be revisioned under the controls of product lifecycle
yeah,
management and pushed out to anybody in the organization who needs that. I mean, this is what I
yeah, yeah,
keep hearing from our customers who are interacting with Design Hub today. Um,
yeah. Exactly right. So in addition to that kind of upfront leading indicator of a problem being that people lose time because they're searching for information, they don't know where it is. There are all these other sort of more real-time or more lagging indicators where if you get it wrong, if you waste that time and find the file and then go ahead and assume it's the right one, but it's actually not, and you're sending it off to a supplier who's building something to the wrong requirements, to the wrong definition. Well, what does that mean? That means that you're probably just wasted a lot of time. You probably having to scrap if you then source components on the basis of that, or uh, do tooling and actually machine components, and you start to cut steel on the basis of that, you might have to scrap stuff, so you write off expense, uh, or source some new components, and now you have a delay, and now you have rework just to get you back on track. And maybe you're doing all this to meet a customer commitment. And maybe you no longer can meet that commitment. Maybe there are penalties associated to that, or brand damage that comes from it. Or maybe you're trying to hit a certain release window for a new product where you've got key trade shows that you're trying to get something developed in time. And if you can't hit that, then you're compromising your business continuity and your ability to bring revenue in. So there are these kind of leading bad indicators and then these lagging bad indicators, all of which compromise your ability to succeed with your products.
Yeah, so 19% of engineering time going to just looking to files is just that's just the most immediate impact
Yeah,
that's easy to quantify. A lot of other things
right.
downstream that maybe gets hidden with the scrap and rework and other missed deadlines. that aren't even quantified in that stat. That's
Quality problems,
expensive.
customer dissatisfaction. Yeah.
Who is this ideal for? Who needs to be thinking through how they can improve their CAD to PLM connectivity and then just getting all of that information to the rest of their organization?
Right. So the typical departments that would be interested in this problem because they're the ones that would be using these solutions would be engineering. So it's typically a head of engineering that would be sort of the most opportune person to have this discussion with that we've got a solution for here. But as we mentioned, there are then downstream departments that would be positively affected by implementing a solution like Design Hub. And conversely, they would continue to potentially face problems by delaying the implementation of a solution like Design Hub. And those would principally include quality, production, procurement, service, I would say.
So, and those are all the users. I've got to think that at the IT level, not needing to take valuable resources to maintain multiple different systems in a complex IT stack just to get that spider web of design to PLM to work, it's probably got to be a big relief on IT teams as well if they can just use one solution and it's standardized and it's productized so that it's forward and backwards compatible. That has to be a big benefit to those teams as well.
There can absolutely be a technology modernization and a cost of ownership advantage that IT would be principally concerned with. That would be a benefit out of going this route with Propel.
Yeah. And then ultimately, I got to think as CFO as well. If I'm deprecating multiple different systems and the people who are responsible for maintaining those integrations can now focus elsewhere, that just has to drive a lot of productivity and profitability as well from that perspective.
A CFO hearing that you want to save money?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, great. Last thing, anything else that comes to mind on Design Hub that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I would just say that we're looking at it like you can handle this design data dilemma in a couple of ways. One is kind of the import export. One is kind of a workflow based approach. At certain triggers, you might release and design information to the enterprise. And then the third is kind of the bi-directional, synced, kind of highly bespoke approach. We've got capabilities that support all of them. But what you tend to see from the other vendors is a reliance and a bias towards the third one. Why? Well, they tend to all have a CAD system that they develop and they support that they tend to be biased towards. Even though they will support a multi-CAD environment, they're generally also going to have their favorite child in the equation. And configuring a solution that takes care of that favorite child as well as the lesser children and tries to keep them all up to date ends up being a very complicated, very costly environment. So for those that are interested in it, we can offer solutions there. But we're seeing that there's been sort of that unmet promise on the other areas, kind of the very robust mapping profiles, which is kind of an import-export approach, and the workflow trigger-based approach, where design does some work, and at some point it makes sense to involve other people. So there's a publication, a release candidate that gets published to the enterprise. Those are approaches that I think haven't really been put forth so much because they haven't necessarily worked in the advantage of the traditional vendors. For us, though, we think that that's what the customer wants. They want that ability to choose and to meet them where they are.
Yeah, that's a good point. We are not part of a corporate umbrella that includes a CAD in the portfolio.
Right.
So from day one, we knew that we had to work with all CAD vendors, and we do work with all CAD vendors, and anybody who's using multiple ones will find that our solution is going to be easier because of that preferred child relationship that you mentioned when it makes sense, right? If my PLM or my PDM is under the same corporate umbrella as my CAD, I'm going to build for that. And then if there's a different CAD that needs to be incorporated, so be it. We'll figure that out later. And we don't take that approach.
Right.
We take the approach of having to connect to all of them. And that was how it was from day one because we've never had CAD in our portfolio. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. You got it.
All right. Well, thanks, Tom. Appreciate the background on the winter release and Design Hub. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about Propel One because that one's a pretty long conversation on its own. But thanks for walking us through this today.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you.